We're back at it
with
The
another
bridges.
episode. Our name to the public eye, babe.
Oh yeah, to the public eye. It's all good. But yeah, Noire Ganja, we back in this thing
Yes.
for episode number
Two.
2.
Yeah, we're gonna call it number 2.
Dose.
I'm Catelyn.
I'm Kris.
Yes, and we're here for another episode. We're trying to get this ball on a roll.
Rolling.
Get y'all
I'm
these.
rolling.
I don't know that song. Damn, that's
Anyways,
embarrassing.
yeah,
Okay.
it's okay.
All right, redact that. Okay, so we're back at it again. We can talk about what Noire Ganja is, I guess, since it's only the second episode. So we can keep a little reiterate until y'all really get to know us. So we're here to just kind of discuss things that we learned about cannabis. And we're kind of trying to still figure out the layout of the podcast, but we kind of just want to start learning and contributing and giving information back out. So when we learn something, we kind of want to make notes of it, summarize it, and give it back to y'all in a form of podcast, in a form of a YouTube video. Hopefully your girl's going to try to do some blogging. I got the first draft done, but I want to
write.
Yes, I'm trying to, get better at my writing. It's 2021 goals.
Glow up.
Yes. So here we are. Our last episode that we posted was just a little introduction to who we are and what we are at the Bridges household.
You dig?
Why we think we are capable of discussing
Credentialed.
cannabis topics with y'all.
And that's that on that.
And that's that on that. So what are we going to talk about in this episode? Well, we are going to talk about what is the difference between marijuana and industrial hemp. So we're going to talk about what classifies industrial hemp, what classifies marijuana, and do you know the difference between the two? Because what if your mamas, your grandmamas, your granddaddies start asking about
hemp?
You should be able to tell them that there's different purposes for this plant, and it's not just for recreational use. It's not just for medicinal use, but there's a lot of different purposes. And you're going to also see that there's a lot of work that needs to be done in the field of cannabis, which is, boom, our goal. And then we're going to tie it up and we're going to relate it back to Black people, because that's who we are. We're here to discuss our history and our correlation to this plant. So it's very interesting because every time we learn something, we're like, oh, hell.
Wow.
Niggas is racist.
You're killing it. Wow. Grammy.
So here we are. And so we're going to try to figure out our layout. And what the layout is going to be is just up to us at this point in time and whatever we're looking at. So this is a segment that we came up with. And it's going to be it's going to talk about, pretty much this section is going to talk about films, audio, media posts, podcasts, and different type of books that discuss cannabis in any type of way. So, and it's going to be called, Were You High When You Watched That? And the answer is yes. Yes, I was. Because some of these things, it just don't feel right to not watch things about cannabis not high. It just makes sense.
A point.
But, okay, so what I want to discuss is I watched a movie. It was called Grass. It was filmed in 1999. And it was pretty much, it talked about the history of cannabis laws in America. So it was kind of interesting, actually.
It's a dark one.
Yeah, it's like it was good at laying out laws in America that started the prohibition of hemp or the prohibition of cannabis. So it was good at doing that. But what I do want to highlight is that it was white-centered AF.
So, like, just a white perspective?
It was very, yes. So, like, for example, it would be quickly saying, like, cannabis was used in these brown communities and these Black communities, but it didn't talk about the impact of those communities. But what it did highlight was not only was it affecting these minority people, these groups, it was affecting young white children.
And that's why it was a problem.
And that's why it was a problem.
It's ruining our white youth. It's destroying them. It's a gateway.
And so that's how they got to people's hearts to be like, give us this money so we can make these laws and do these things to protect our white children. So it's kind of like they just leave out a lot of history that seriously just affects Black and brown communities. But that's why we're here, because we're going to try to, correlate those things. And so, yeah, if you ever want to watch that movie, I think it's good for just
overall general education.
So what did you
go
think?
Into it open-minded, of course,
but babe, what did you when I showed you a few scenes. What scenes did you watch? It was one scene that it was an experiment and he was smoking and he was just like super high, and I
remember one scene you showed me. It was like a lab environment and people basically were like, we'll smoke every single day if this is what it feels like. And I don't know. I guess just historically, I feel like a lot of policy is written in a way that damages the image of marijuana and only associates like these bad experiences and things that ultimately will lead you down a path of social and economic deterioration, honestly.
And that's what I didn't like about that movie, because it didn't talk about any of those impacts.
Any of the positive impacts.
Yeah, and it was just like, it's just crazy because
it's very one-sided.
Yeah, it's very one-sided. So
I don't know. You probably can say it of anything in the world. Like, if you only talk about the bad, bad is all you'll know.
And that's what that movie did a good job of too. It showed like highlights of how the propaganda started to say like, if you smoke this weed, then
you definitely gonna do crack.
No, it was way worse than that. Like in 1930s, babe, they would say like, if you see a Black man smoking weed, he's probably gonna come in your house and rape your white women in your household. Damn. Stuff like that. Or they would show like a little clip like back in the day when it was just like reels of cameras, they with no sound. They'll be like, what are you smoking? He'll be like, I'm smoking that H. They'll be like, how'd you get that H? Well, first I started off with marijuana. And then,
for the people that don't know what H is, it's heroin.
It's heroin. And it's crazy heroin. Because one of the little clips was like, it was so crazy. They said like, Doug started smoking marijuana. And 2 weeks later, he was still high. And him and his friends cracked open bottles. And when they drank and opened the bottles,
They swallowed glass.
They swallowed glass and had it.
He didn't even know it.
And then he got hooked on heroin. So it was just like crazy, crazy propaganda. And then you sprinkle in our white children are affected. That's all you got.
Instant policy.
So if you have them like blaming dark-skinned people, Black and brown people for smoking this, and then you think they're going to rape your kids or rape your white wife, or I don't know what they think this will do, but it's just really, really crazy, the propaganda that they put out back in the day. But that's how they pretty much started. But it was good at correlating the history. And if you're ever interested in watching it, yeah, just probably be high and you can get through it.
All right.
Okay, so that was the segment for that.
What else you got?
Okay, so now we are moving on to a Bay segment, okay? And this is going to be called, If You Come Up, Don't Forget About Your Dog. That's law. It's called That's Law.
That's law.
That's law. Because there's so many laws that have been put out just now, back in the day, and that's going into the future, that this is just a segment that's just going to be forever going, because we're in the midst of it now. So not only can we talk about the past, but we could talk about what's happening now in California and Colorado, all these places that are going to be everywhere. So this is just going to be a good segment of where we can always kind of come back around and keep people updated or keep people hip on what's going on. Sorry about that. Our dog is he's out here.
He a real ass
nigga.
Putting on his toy. But cool, that's law. So to jump into our topic today, we have the Marijuana Act of 1937, which is notorious for honestly just setting the framework for policy on marijuana and hemp, and how access to the plants has really been determined for almost 100 years, if you really think about it at this point.
Yeah,
for
it was like
100 years they've been
1937.
policing weed
and
hemp, excuse me. So is it Harry Anslinger?
Hash slinging,
slash slinging, hash slinging slasher. Harry Anslinger was, what was his role? You remember that?
Yes. Okay. So let me hold on. I got it. So pretty much Harry Anslinger, he was I have it in my notes. I'm sorry, y'all.
It's all good.
Because we want to give you the correct information.
Check the Carfax on him.
Because what we don't do.
But to expedite, Harry Anslinger was he was off the chain, man. This dude out the gate was not for marijuana.
Okay, I got it ready.
Yeah, go ahead.
He was the Federal Bureau of Narcotics Commissioner, and he was racist
as they come.
And let me preference this. Can I before you get into this? This man resigned in 1962. He literally started this program, and he was in this so long that he literally is the center. He is the start of the war on drugs. This man is the origin of the war on drugs. He served for 5 different presidencies. So he was able to pass laws and legislations through 5 different presidents: Hoover, Roosevelt, Truman, Eisenhower, and Kennedy.
So he was tapped in.
He was tapped in. He literally built this. And that's crazy, but
that's embarrassing.
Yeah, so he was pretty much a huge advocate for this Marijuana Tax Act of 1937. So it's just crazy. So continue, babe.
It's all good. That was good info. So what this law eventually did was force all parties that interacted with marijuana to obviously pay taxes into the government. And, always got to give Uncle Sam his cut. But it regulated the plants in a way that, I guess, for lack of a better phrase, didn't benefit anybody.
At all. Not the industrial people, not the people using it for medicinal purpose.
Yeah.
It just kind of wrapped it all in one. It didn't really categorize this plant and its purposes. So that's why.
Exactly. Yeah. And a part of the policy was they honestly had to get like a stamp type of thing for the plants. And if you didn't have it, you could be fined up to $2,000, which I don't know what that would have been like in 1937. 2 racks on a fine, and then up to 3 years imprisonment. So the government didn't actively give out these stamps. So everybody that got caught was taking that L.
And they didn't, and what that movie said, that they wasn't really even giving out these stamps
wasn't getting the stamps.
So hella people have weed and marijuana and cannabis, but you can't do nothing with it. But you can't do nothing with it. They're going to find you. They're going to tax you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the wild part, because the plant as a whole was not illegal. It was just the transaction of marijuana that became policed against.
Yeah.
And
that was just the basis.
Yeah, that was the basis of all of the policy. And in many ways, I think that's kind of how it is now.
Yeah, it's like, you'd probably do a way better job of explaining. So I'm not even about to jump into that. So,
no, it's okay.
But that makes sense.
Go down that rabbit hole some other time.
Yeah, but that's another episode just to talk about that, because that's what they did. That's how they started. And that was Harry Anslinger.
Anslinger, the hash slinging slasher.
Let me tell y'all one more thing. Let me tell y'all he's racist, because this is what he said, quote, and this is from www.drugequality.org, and they kind of reference a multitude. That's how I found this movie Grass, because they reference this in some of his racist slurs. And he said, reefer makes darkies think that they're as good as a white man.
End quote.
End quote. So he's racist. And so, you got any more you want to talk about that act?
No, that's
I think
what
that
I
was
got
pretty
about
good.
that.
That's a good base. That's all it was.
Yeah.
It was just the basis of them starting to police this plant. We're not even knowing the purposes, regardless of what research was saying nothing was doing anything to people.
That's a good point. There's been so many, I guess, federally backed research.
They said nothing is wrong with
programs
this.
that have, to your point, shown time and time again there are no correlations between marijuana having
and all these
negative side effects.
Besides, if you obviously, if you're smoking it, there you have a high chance of cancer or something like that. But that's because you're inhaling shit into your lungs. So that's just
proven?
But that's that's just a given. Depending on what you're smoking, you're always increasing your exposure to lung failure things
but
or
they
diseases.
Don't cancel cigarettes.
Exactly. That's the point.
They're not worried about
doing
cancer.
they're doing stupid shit. They're just making up shit because that's they're just making up shit. So now we're going to get into the main topic.
Ooh.
Because we're going to talk about what's the difference between marijuana
and hemp.
Okay, babe, let me ask you this because I don't know if you know. What is the species of industrial hemp? It starts with a C.
I don't even know what you're asking.
Okay. So pretty much.
So we all learning. We all learning today, y'all.
Okay, so the way that plant biology is broken down is just like we are like a species of humans, plants are also a species. So cannabis is a species of plants. And within that species, you can have different varieties of plants. Mm-hmm. So they're the same, but maybe something is just slightly different in one plant versus another. So a flower, you can have the same species of flower, but they're different varieties because one flower is yellow and one flower is pink. Mm. But they look the same, they're just different colors. So that's similar to cannabis. And that's what it is. So industrial hemp and marijuana is called cannabis sativa.
Dang.
Okay. So industrial hemp is cannabis, sativa is the species, and currently it is categorized as cannabis sativa, and sativa, the second sativa, is the variety of cannabis. Got it?
Yeah, I'm with you.
Okay. So what is
a lot of sativa?
And also, I mean, we're not even going to go down that rabbit hole because there's going to be so many things that
the
change.
indica sativa debate?
Yes. And I don't even want to get into that right now. That's going to be a whole nother episode because...
Another one.
It's not even labeled correctly, y'all, but we're going to get into that later. But we're going to talk about the uses of industrial hemp, this cannabis sativa. Do you know the uses, babe?
Of hemp?
Mm-hmm.
I know they make clothes with it.
So, good. Fiber.
Yeah.
So, there's fiber. You can use it for oil. And you can also use it for medicinal purposes. So examples of fiber, you can do textiles, rope. They also use it. You can use it for insulation. You can use it for...
that's smart.
Have you ever heard materials? You can also use it for chemical absorbents.
Sounds pretty universal.
Personal care products, topicals, treatments. And you can also use it for biodiesel. I'm going to look into that. We're going to do an episode on how the hell they use hemp oil for biodiesel.
Oh, they build different.
And also just medicinal purposes, like it should have been used for anyway. So I looked it up, and hemp is actually the longest, strongest, and most durable of all natural fibers.
Dang. Even like silk?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Silk's a pretty big deal. So.
Yeah. And so it just makes you think why would they pretty much
put a ban on it,
cancel this plant? Yeah. It has so many benefits in so many different areas.
And issue so with economics, I bet.
Sounds like racism. White supremacy, patriarchal capitalism. Okay. Shout out to T Queen J. That's the podcast I got that term from. And so it just makes you think of how is the current administration moving towards making things better.
Okay.
And so currently how it's categorized is any derivative of cannabis, that'd be flower, oil,
wax,
anything that has extremely low concentrations of delta 9 cannabinoid.
That's THC. That's what she's talking about.
Sorry, y'all. I'm dyslexic and I'm just realizing it in my life.
She is.
But I'm going to get it right because I'm going to be a cannabis expert. So if a cannabis plant has less than 0.3% THC, then it's categorized as industrial hemp.
That sounds like a really low number.
Yes. So this is where you get into that's where the government is struggling because you can't tell that by just looking at the plant. You can't tell hemp versus marijuana by just looking at their flowers.
Just looking at nugs.
Because the thing is even though hemp doesn't have THC, it still has all those other cannabinoids, CBD, all those really essential things that are doing therapeutic effects. So it's going to look the same because they're the same species, just different varieties.
Indeed.
And so, but that's not a Schedule 1 drug anymore. So,
it's a start.
It's a start. But that is the biggest difference between these two plants. But I want to get into also just back in the day and kind of why it was even made illegal. Because in that movie, they described why brown communities, specifically Mexicans, were kind of targeted for using marijuana. And during that time, since they couldn't do slavery anymore, they had to abolish slavery, they started using Mexicans to pretty much work farms. And obviously there was still sharecropping and all that extra shit. But they targeted pretty much Mexicans near the Texas border that had marijuana on them. And that's how they started policing that area. But then also Black jazz musicians also smoked hella weed. And so they started targeting areas, communities of color, which is not really highlighted in that movie that I discussed. And so that's how Harry Anslinger kind of got his foot started, because he said all these people of color are smoking weed. So
reefers back then.
So if we target these communities, scare these white communities saying these colored people are now doing X, Y, and Z things, then we can start policing. And so that's how he got his foot in the door and started getting money for legislation such as the Marijuana Tax Act of 1937, because he started doing all kind of crazy ass propaganda that we discussed earlier. And so, and one of the last things he did before he kind of like said his deuces was that in 1970, he contributed to passing the Controlled Substance Act, which defined cannabis as a Schedule 1 drug. But what do you think? What kind of drugs do you think is in this category?
Heroin.
Meth. H.
Probably anything that people like illegally shoot into their bodies.
LSD.
Ecstasy. Some off the wall, like real danger drugs.
Yeah. And what categorizes these controlled substances in the Schedule 1 is that it says that the drug or other substance has a high potential for abuse. The drug or other substance has no currently accepted medical treatment in the U.S.
That sounds like a conflict of interest already.
It has a lack of accepted safety for use under medical supervision.
Also a conflict if it's medically diagnosed.
Yes.
But okay.
So industrial hemp just became okay to do in 2018.
Oh, that's embarrassing.
Yeah. And I don't remember the exact law, but I think it's like Farm Bill 2018 or something you can find. But that's when they kind of categorized the difference between marijuana and hemp, and that was the THC levels. Not really anything about the plant itself, but can this plant get you intoxicated or not, regardless of what it did. And so just back on our cannabis shit, back on what's the difference, and if they actually are different or or just very, very similar. And typically this plant is green, you know that. The difference between the way hemp and marijuana is grown is for hemp, you kind of want to place the plant super close. so they can grow up, because you want to get the stalks for the fiber, and maybe you can get whatever you can from the buds up top. And those can grow up to like 15 feet.
And it's a real life tree.
Yeah. And then with marijuana, you kind of want to grow it a little bit closer, because you want them to grow out so you can have more dense buds. And those still can get tall. Like, remember when we went to the farm?
Yeah.
They were tall as hell. They were like 10 feet.
Like 10 feet.
They're definitely like 10 feet. So like they can get tall too, and they can have pretty dense buds. So they're very similar in plants.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I'm saying there's going to be a lot of changes, and we're going to be able to document those changes, especially with law. But just to wrap it up, I don't want to just talk about the benefits of industrial hemp, because I also feel like marijuana is kind of demonized in a way. And that kind of frustrates me too, because THC has some very, I feel like, therapeutic effect on my body, in terms of maybe anxiety or things that, I mean, some anxious people should not smoke weed. I am not your licensed medical
practitioner.
Don't smoke. I'm not saying that it works for my anxiety. It doesn't work for everyone's anxiety. But one thing that I also want to know is that maybe there's been word that marijuana has a lower tensile strength in fiber. What's that, baby? What's
tensile strength?
Is that how you say it? Tensile?
Yeah. That's
what is
like
it?
Things that break like this in this direction in the horizontal plane.
There you go. Yeah. So it says that like marijuana has, its stalk is less strong.
Dense, basically.
Yeah, but I don't know if that's
rigid.
Actually research. I think that they just try to demonize the plant, like it, but
like
we'll see.
Doesn't even matter.
It doesn't. So like, there's just little itty bitty things that they have categorized this plant to be bad for, but it's a lot of propaganda, and that's what we're here to learn about,
educate on.
So what do you think, babe? What is the main difference between hemp and marijuana?
To me, just overall use. And I think the spectrum of applications between the two. I think marijuana has a lot more to do with consumption, in my opinion, and just like the impacts it may have on your body from a treatment perspective, whereas hemp has the ability to, I guess, contribute to resources. So the oil and different textile fabrications, and then also even the hempcrete, like that is a true civil impact. Like people probably could build homes and fix roadways with things like that. So
also don't forget about the cannabis is also a huge carbon sequester. Is that a word?
Yeah, I'm picking up what you're putting down. At the end of the day, it's still a plant.
Yeah.
And all plants help the environment, right?
Ultimately.
Fixing the air, getting rid of all these greenhouse
soil and
gases. Yeah.
Yeah, it does all kind of things.
Don't be tilling your farms if you got land. Tilling, it's terrible.
Yeah, watch Kiss the Ground.
Kiss the Ground.
It's a great documentary on Netflix.
But yeah, I mean, beyond the propaganda, I can't really see too many reasons, as long as there's a mutually agreed upon like age and different things like that. There's a lot less harm than good.
I agree. And it's
I think it always comes down to money, right?
Yeah.
They don't want to maybe federally and nationally make this legal because it has the ability to maybe impact other markets.
Oh, for sure.
So like people are going to start using hemp. Yeah.
Alcohol, and it's probably going to impact prison systems because not everybody is released
Tobacco.
from prison, from being incarcerated because of weed. They're going to have to let all those people out, and they should have already been let out. But
yeah, we should have had a stat for how many people are in prison for marijuana related crimes.
I don't know, but that's in the ACLU report. We're gonna go over that one day too. Just go
right
through
now,
that
I'm
report.
Just gonna say like 500,000. I feel like it's a lot.
I don't even know.
I feel like
it's too many damn people.
Can you imagine how sick the government would be if they just tomorrow
had to let everybody out. They're sick.
500,000 people.
And most of those arrests are Black and brown people, so they're really not trying to do that. Now kind of governed by two different government agencies or departments. One is ran by the DEA, which is
the Drug Enforcement Agency,
something like that. Yeah, something that they done made up to police Black folks.
Pretty much.
And so DEA runs marijuana, and then the USDA, which is the United States Department of Agriculture, now run hemp. And so, just for example, if you get CBD from a plant that has high THC, that's illegal in some states. But you can get CBD from a plant that has no THC, and that's
not a problem.
Yeah, when they're the same fucking chemical.
Interesting.
The chemicals don't change. The system
is rigged.
But that's pretty much the difference. And I think we're going to be wrapping this show up because that's all I got to say.
That's all I got. If you got to this point in the episode, we definitely appreciate you. And thanks for hanging in there with us. We appreciate the support and the feedback. And hopefully we get you in here for episode 3.
Yeah.
Do you already know what that is?
Yes. We are going to talk about... Drum roll, please. Okay, no. Okay. I'm going to give you 2 because I don't know which one yet. But we're either going to talk about social equity programs.
Okay.
Or we're going to talk about the endocannabinoid system.
All right. Well, if you have a preference for either of those, it'd be quality. If you dropped a comment, and, maybe actually
turn
out that's the one we end up doing.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's all I have.
Yeah. Well, thanks, and we look forward to y'all coming back to the next time to Noire Ganja. Yeah. And also, don't forget to like, subscribe, rate, review, share,
retweet.
Because we kind of just want to give y'all the information we learned at the same time. So come back.
Peace out.
Get at the bridges. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. We really appreciate it. Please rate and review on the platform you listen to this episode. Also, go and visit the website, www.noireganja.com, where you can find blog posts about our home growing journey, professional cannabis journey, and so much more. Thanks for coming.